Once upon a time,
in a land far away.
I'm Katrina.
And I'm Geoff.
This is the Fairy Tellers Podcast.
Myth, legend, folklore, fable.
We explore what they say about cultures then and now,
Grab a hot cup of cocoa and a comfy seat
while we tell you a tale. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We are super excited today because we are going to be having an absolutely delightful episode, and I'm really excited about it.
I also am excited. So we've said that we're excited thrice now. And one of the reasons why we're so excited about this, because we're going to be doing an episode that's based on the joy of a 9-year-old child and the joy that that child has found in the Brothers Grimm's fairy tale collection. We've talked about it before, but you may be tuning in for the very first time today. So I'll give the quick recap of the fact that my son, out of nowhere, I say out of nowhere, but there probably were subliminal things happening behind the scenes that I'm not really thinking of, like the fact that, I do a podcast about folklore and fairy tales.
Was it nature? Was it nurture?
And the fact that we own 4 or 5 copies of the complete fairy tales, Brothers Grimm, whatever collections. But he wanted to read the Brothers Grimm fairy tales all the way through. So we have a big book that's the complete collection of all their fairy tales. And he wanted to read through every single one from beginning to end, no skipping. And so we've been enjoying it. And it's at least the collection that we have and we've been reading from, this is a Barnes and Noble one. I don't know why that's the one. That's just the one that he picked. But there's a lot in the beginning of the book that are ones that you've never heard of. You know what I mean? And I don't know what they did to how they decided the order they were going to go in. They're kind of loosely grouped in some cases. There was a bunch of little Taylor stories all together. Then there were a bunch of Tom Thumb stories together. That
is really interesting because different editions will do what serves them best, including instead of having all of the tales, because it's a high number of tales, they'll usually pick the top tales that they know people will be interested in, because obviously there's a ton of tales. I wanted to pull out my copy and get the exact number of tales.
Yeah, this copy, and I mean, it claims to be complete, but that may be marketing nonsense. But there are 211 tales in this one.
Yeah, no, I'm that's close. Because in the Jack Sipes version, he has a section after 211. There's a section that is called the omitted tales, and it goes to 242. And those are tales that at some point got removed by the Brothers Grimm's themselves. And so a lot of works that are complete works, they are complete works in that they include all of the stories from I think it's the 1857 edition. And so that's 211. But then there's a handful of ones that are the ones that got pulled out either because they were repeats or whatever. And Jack Sipes, considering that he studies fairy tales, that's exclusively what he does, is study fairy tales, teach about fairy tales, translate fairy tales, especially Brothers Grimm. In his version that he, was putting his name on and translating for the more scholarly crowd or whatever, of course he stuck in the 32 random ones.
They're the appendices in the Lord of the Rings. They're part of it, but unless you're a hardcore fan, you're not reading them.
Yeah. I'm that they're what is it? The Silmarillion.
They're the Silmarillion of fairy tales.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like even what your son is having you do of reading him the 211 is, I'm that's pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
That is pretty hardcore.
He's hardcore. I don't know what to say.
But it absolutely makes sense that for a Barnes and Noble edition, that they wanted to put the tales in an order that felt more right, because of course the Brothers Grimm, even when they were making their collection, were just kind of here you go, this is the collection and here you go. There's not that much of a rhyme or reason to how they're paired together, unless I think in some of their editions, if they were religious in nature, they stuck the ones that were more religious in nature together.
Interesting.
Like the religious tales for children.
Yeah. This one, it just really seems like they stuck ones that have like, oh, it has this same word in it, like the wolf and the wolf and the wolf and the wolf and gossip and the wolf. And then Little Red Riding Hood, which has a wolf in it. Then there's like foxes in a row. But I also said, it's also weird because I said at the beginning, there's some of the ones we've read already were about like, whatever, the gallant tailor and the brave little tailor and a bunch of tailors. And then one of like number 208, the cunning little tailor. So it also is ending with some tailor. But we've gotten into a really good stretch where we're on some of the ones that everyone has heard of, like Cinderella, Rapunzel, Sleeping Beauty. And to show how serious this kid is about this is we've been about to read Hansel and Gretel for like a little while, but there's just been things where it's like they're, because of staying up late and like going to pool parties and stuff like that, like there hasn't been as much time for like reading books and whatever. And even tonight I was like, oh, there's time to read it probably, but we'll have to like read quick if we want to read Hansel and Gretel. He's like, no. He's like, I want you to be confident that you have enough time to do it justice. He didn't say do it justice, but he's like, to really read the story.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, so we put off Hansel and Gretel for another day because he wants to get, the full experience.
I love that. He's like, no, I don't want to rush through it. I want to relish this.
And it's been really fun to read these with my son for a few reasons. One, like when there's ones that he's not really into, he still enjoys them to some degree. It's like, oh, that's interesting, And he he doesn't want to skip any. Like he really wants to. This does seem very much in keeping with his personality and just the way that he is. As far as I think he does want to brag to be like, I've read all of the Grimm Brothers fairy tales. You know what I mean? Like to be able to kind of like have that as like a flex, which is great because I mean he will have actually done that. So and he's like a really good reader. He like reads along with me and he very helpfully points out when I say words in the. One of the annoying things in this translation, there'll be lots of the tales where they'll say, instead of like he said, she said, they'll be like says he, says she.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. And I accidentally switch it around. But he's like, again, he wanted me to be able to do Hansel and Gretel justice. He wants me to read verbatim how the stories are written. He's like, if he knew that these were translated from German, he'd probably be like, hey, why are we not reading the German? The original German. Like, I need to be able to tell people that I've read the Brothers Grimm in the original German.
This just delights me so much too, because we've talked so much about how the stories, like the title of the original like Brothers Grimm's was like household and children's tales. So it's like a mix. I mean, and then through the translations, through more and more translations, the Brothers Grimm were actively trying to make them more marketable for children. Like, so they were actively aware that their audience who was more likely to buy it were parents. And so they did start to like change it. And so it's interesting that you get to have like that experience of sitting with a child being like, all right, give me your thoughts. Like, how do you feel about this? Because I love it now that my kids are getting older, when I need to be reading more tales. So like for an episode, like I'm doing research and for every one tale that gets retold on the podcast, I have to read 10 to 20 other tales to figure out what I'm going to do to like, which ones would be a good example of whatever, like what. Yeah. And it is so helpful when I have a kid sitting next to me and I have a reason, like an excuse to be reading it out loud. Because I'm getting my work done by reading it, and I get to see somebody experiencing the tale.
Right. To be like, oh, this one would be a good one to retell because like they enjoyed it, or whatever.
Yeah. Like, oh, this kid was like laughing hysterically or stopping me to ask me a question about like saying like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. And then being like, oh, let me tell you, let me give you a little bit of context. It kind of like, there's just something really great and positive about being able to read it to somebody else, retell it to a young person who doesn't have, like, has not heard as many tales or experienced as many tales as an adult.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that has been fun. And one of the most fun things has been, first has been the stories that he really, really enjoys. Like the Tom Thumb ones, he said, he's like, I love these ones. They're so fun. Like these just small little people doing small little people things, getting stuck inside of animals and all sorts of crazy stuff while they're out on their adventures.
Stuck inside of animals?
Yeah, they get like eaten by animals, and then they like trick people. They convince people to like basically like kill the animals and like eat them so that they can get out of inside of because they get eaten by a wolf or whatever. And one, it's not the one that we're going to talk about today, but there's the young giant. It starts off as like a Tom Thumb one, but then something happens and he turns into a giant. So it's like little man to giant man. And it's a hilarious one. So that's the most fun thing. The second most fun thing is seeing his reaction to stories that we've read and talked about already on the podcast.
Yeah.
And like getting a kid's perspective. And also, you know, especially on the big, like Cinderella, like he knows the Cinderella story. He's seen the many versions of this story in many different ways.
Yeah.
But then like his reaction when it's like the stepsisters are like cutting off parts of their feet and like getting their eyes pecked out by birds. He's like, what the heck is happening? And it's like so funny to see that reaction.
Oh man. There are so many stories in the Brothers Grimm collection that are like that, where you yourself think that you know where the story is going because you think that you're familiar with like the tale.
Uh-huh.
And then you find out, psych, no, you don't know anything.
Yeah. The other one that was really great. So like a couple like King Thrushbeard, he didn't like really get that one. He was just kind of like, wow, that guy was like kind of a jerk. Like, why did they get married in the end? Or like stay together or whatever in the end.
Oh man, that's fascinating too. Hearing the take of like kids who are part of like this like newest generation who are listening to the tales and they're noticing things where they're like, wait, that's messed up. That's messed up. I don't like that.
Along those lines, you know what other one really threw my son for a loop?
Oh, please let it be Tarantino birds.
Fitcher's bird.
Oh, Fitcher's bird. I love Fitcher's bird.
It's such a good one.
Oh my gosh.
But also he was like, what the heck? But he like also kind of loved it. He like loved to be like, that was so messed up. Yeah, he reveled in how messed up it was.
Yeah. One, the kidnappings, that's pretty messed up, is like the kidnappings. But then also like the dismemberment, like the dismembered body parts. Yeah. And then there's the like sneaking everybody out. Yeah. And then the lighting the guy on fire. It's still I feel like that is such an underrated story. People talk about Bluebeard.
Yeah.
I don't give a crap about Bluebeard, whatever. No. Fitcher's bird is where it's at. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. I love that one. And it reminded me, I probably said it on the episode that we did of Fitcher's bird, but I was like, movie. This needs to be a movie.
Yes.
Because that's awesome. You know what his favorite part was, though, of Fitcher's bird was like when she's inside of his like backpack and he like keeps trying to put the backpack down to like rest, and she's like, I can still see you, my husband, or whatever, like tricking him into thinking that like she can see him from the window and she's really just in his backpack. He thought that was hilarious.
I can't remember if it's in that version or in like a different version, but there is like one of those versions where like when he's carrying her, he's like, oh, this one is heavier than all the other ones. And I'm like,
the sacks of gold.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, that uncalled for, rude. Like that rude.
I can't remember if it said that one in this one or not, but it sounds familiar. But it does also like point out a theme that he has really been enjoying, which I think the general theme is like tricking people. He loves when people are tricking people, which brings me to the story of the episode that I was like, he laughed so hard and I laughed so hard. Like we had to like send a message to you on Marco Polo to tell you about it. And then I was like, we need to retell this one on the podcast because it was like so funny. And that is called Clever Gretel, which I don't think I had ever read or heard before or heard about at all. But it's about a clever girl that is tricking people in a hilarious way.
Oh, and what is her?
And her name is Gretel.
And what is her name? We love a titular character. We love a titular queen.
Titular queen. Happy Pride. So that's what we're going to do today. And it actually also, the original plan was just to redo this story or a couple of stories that my son enjoyed, which we will continue to do. This is an unofficial series of telling you some of his favorite stories, because there's another one I definitely want to tell. I think I already said it, the Young Giant. But just in like briefly researching this and like the, ATU tail type and stuff like that, found some interesting stuff about it. So we're going to retell the story, talk about just a couple little things that I learned, Maybe
Yeah.
tell like a couple other sort of related stories like we always do. But first, Clever Gretel. There was once a cook called Gretel. Would you believe it? One interesting thing about Gretel was that she wore shoes that had red heels, which I thought was interesting. And it also
Yeah.
was saying too, like when she went out in her red heels, she gave herself great airs and thought herself very fine indeed, which was kind of like out of place for someone that's working, getting sweaty and dirty in a kitchen as a cook.
Yeah, like a cook. What's funny is like, yeah, I'm just like imagining full outfit, but like kind of a cook's outfit,
But it's like
but
red
then she's
heels.
got these like crazy stilettos on, and it's like, girl, where are you
But
going?
it's talking about like, so this is what she would wear like when she went out, like when she went out of the house, like out on the town and whatever.
No, she cooked
And
in
she
them.
probably did. I'm not saying she didn't, but
No, yeah,
the other thing
nice.
that I loved about, I could just so clearly picture this woman as like a modern day woman, which again, I'm like, short film at least for this story. But what I loved her is she's an alcoholic. She would be out trotting around in her red shoes with red heels, and then when she came home again, she would take a drink of wine to refresh herself. And because it's like this is the grown up version of if you give a mouse a cookie, and because drinking her wine gave her an appetite, she would take some of the best of whatever she was cooking, because she said a cook must know how things taste, but she was taking more than just a little taste of the food. It was like, this like, I could just picture she's like chugging like wine and being like, oh, let me just have a little piece because I have to know how it tastes. And she like rips off like a whole like, chicken leg and she's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Picture kind of like Frog and Toad. I picture like Wallace and Gromit, like, like, oh, that's just like an excuse for us to have some more cheese. It's like, oh, the cheese is gone.
Yes.
What a shame. I guess that's just an excuse to have more cheese or whatever. And I love it. I love her energy. So one day her master came to her and was saying, hey, Gretel, I'm expecting a guest this evening, so I would like you to make ready a pair of fowls. And she's like, I'll see to it. I'll make sure it gets done. And so she kills the fowls, cleans them, plucks them, puts them on the spit. And as evening is drawing closer, she puts them in front of the fire so that they can roast, which I was like, put it on a spit, rotisserified it, and then put it like to get the nice, like, roasted like crust on the skin on the outside, like the crispiness.
Yes.
I was like, man, I want some of this. And so as they're in front of the fire, they start to get brown and we're nearly done, but the guest hasn't shown up yet. And it's like, these fowls are like at their peak deliciousness. And she's like, hey, if he doesn't hurry up, she says to her master, she's like, I got to take them off of the fire. And it's kind of a shame not to eat them now because
eat them hot and
it's like they're done right now.
You don't want to overcook the chicken. Yeah, you don't want dry chicken.
And so the master's like, okay, I'll go out and I'll go get the guest. And so as soon as the master gets out and is like running off to bring the guest over, Gretel takes the fowls off of the fire. And she's like, oh man, standing in front of the fire for so long really does make one hot and thirsty, which I was like, different meaning now too. But so she's like, it does make one hot and thirsty, and who knows when they'll come back. So she's like, you know what? In the meantime, master's away. I'll just dip off into the cellar and have a little drink.
Yeah. You might as well. You've earned it.
And so she ran down, took up a mug and saying, here's to me, and took a good draught of her, and took a good big drink of wine. And then she said, one good drink deserves another, and it should not be cut short. So she took another hearty drink. Just like Lay's potato chips. You can't stop at just one.
She's like, one glass of really good wine. Do you know what pairs well with one glass of really good wine? Another glass of really good wine.
That is like Frog and Toad. Like, what goes well with the cookie? Another cookie. Oh, I love it. And here's the thing I love about it too, and why I love Clever Gretel. She's alone by herself, but just like living her best life, like having a ball, eating, drinking, being merry, and she's gonna die tomorrow. Just kidding. So after she takes this second big drink, she goes and she puts the fowls down in front of the fire again and starts basting them with butter and turning the spit around very briskly. But then, man, did these birds start smelling so good. She sees like,
I bet.
they've been cooking for so long. They're done. You know what? I really have to know whether they're good or not. I have to taste. I have to make sure they're good.
Of course. Because it would be a shame if the guest got all the way there and then the chicken tasted bad.
Yeah. She
Gotta check.
She had to check. So she licked her fingers and cried out, "Well, I never. The fowls are good. It's a sin and a shame that no one's here to eat them." She ran to the window to see if her master and her guests were coming, but she could see nobody heading back to the house. And she's like, "Oh my, one of the wings is burning." Wink. I'd better get up and eat it and get it out of the way. So she cut off the wing and she ate it, and it tasted good. Oh, well, I'd better cut off the other one too in case the master notices that something's missing. And so she cut off the other wing and ate it. It's like, it has to be even, you know? You can't have a lopsided bird.
Or he'd be like, wait, there's one wing. What happened to the other one? Best be fair and eat both.
So when both wings had been disposed of, she went and looked for her master. But still, he had not come. So she's like, well, who knows whether they're coming or not? They might have stopped and put themselves up at an inn for the night. And she paused and said again, well, since that's the case, I might as well make myself happy.
Yeah, girl.
So she's like, I'll make sure I get a good drink and then a good meal. When it's done, I shall be easy. The gifts of the gods are not to be despised. But it's kind of like, you know, I'll have myself a good night. It's like, because we can't let such a good thing go to waste, basically.
Yeah.
And so again, she runs down into the cellar, has a famous drink, eats up one of the birds with great relish. And when she was done, the master still hadn't come home. And so Gretel, having had how many drinks now? 3 or 4?
I think she had 2 glasses before she ate the first chicken. Or like before she ate the wings. So it was like, yeah, she like ate the wings. Or it was like 2 glasses of wine, ate the wings, another glass of wine, rest of the chicken.
Yeah. And so eats, the whole bird. And after that, she starts looking at the other one and she's like, oh, you know, she says, it's like, well, you know what? If I've eaten one, I better eat the other. Because like,
they belong together.
Yeah, that's exactly what she says. The 2 belong to each other, and it's only fair that they should be treated alike.
Yeah, we don't want to separate them.
Perhaps when I've had another drink, I'll manage it. I'll be able to manage it. So she's like, oh man, you know what? These birds really belong together. Let me go get another drink so I can like manage to be able to eat an entire other chicken.
She's like, together in life, together in death, together in my stomach.
Oh, man. And so she takes another hearty drink, and then the second fowl went the way of the first. And just as she's in the middle of eating this bird, the master comes back. And he says, make haste, Gretel, the guest is coming directly. She's like, very well, master, it'll be ready soon. As she's like looking at the bones of one and like the half-eaten other one. But very confidently said that. And so the master went to make sure that the table was set and all of that stuff. And he took the carving knife that he was going to use to carve the fowls and starts sharpening it, getting ready for the guest to arrive so he can have his, his knife nice and sharpened so he can cut the bird and serve it to his guest,
Yeah.
And so he's there like sharpening his giant carving knife. And so the guest comes to the door and knocks very genteelly and softly at the door. And so Gretel ran and looked to see who it was. And it was obviously the guest. And so when she caught sight of the guest, she puts a finger up and she's like, shh, hush, you better make haste and get out of here. Because if my master catches you, it's going to be really bad news for you. He asked you to come to supper, but really he lured you here so he can cut off your ears. Listen, he's sharpening his knife right now. And he hears like,
oh my God,
sharpening the carving knife.
Oh God.
And so the guest, hearing the noise that the sharpening made, took off as fast as he could go. And Gretel ran back to the house screaming to her master. And she's like, oh, a pretty good guest that you've had to the house. And the master's like, what? Gretel, what do you mean? He's like, what do I mean indeed? This guy, he's gone away and run away with the pair of fowls that I just dished up. And the master's like, oh, well, that's some pretty rude sort of conduct. And so he's like, man, I was really looking forward to eating these birds. Maybe he'll have left me one so that I can at least have something to eat. And so he gets up and he starts running after the guest, holding the knife in his hand as he's running after, his guest, who he thinks has just run away with these 2 birds. And he's like, only one, meaning that he wanted the guest to leave him one of the birds for him to eat. But the guest thought that he meant that he was only going to cut off one of his ears. And so he ran even faster than he did before so that he might get home with both of his ears safe. The end. Which was just such a delightful, hilarious tale.
I'm not familiar with this story because, like, unlike your son, I have not read all of the Brothers Grimm collection in its
Dude,
entirety.
He's gonna be so stoked when he finds that out.
He's gonna beat me. I finished it. She didn't. And so here are the two things that I was thinking when I was listening to this story that I had not heard before. One, obviously delightful. Love it. Like the misunderstanding. Two, the red shoes, which people will notice did not pop up again in the story. They were just at the beginning.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, it seems to me like it's like a character. It's like, here's a signal of the type of character that this is, you know?
Yes.
And I think it kind of accomplishes that. What accomplishes it even more is like her, the way that she is.
Yeah.
She shows her character by the choices and actions that she makes.
I'm trying to remember, Geoff, if this was a Patreon episode that we did, but there's a story, and I believe it's like a Swedish story. I'm trying to remember, where this woman is rewarded red shoes by the devil when she breaks up a couple that are in love with each other. Because like they just had such a close, good relationship with each other that the devil was like, oh, I can't even get them to fight or to bicker or anything like with each other. It's so frustrating. And this lady was like, oh, I could get them to break up. No problem. And she basically goes to each of the members of the couple separately. And she like told the wife, oh yeah, your husband, he's such a good man. He's like an amazing man. It's too bad that he has these like 3 whiskers on his chin that like entice him to do evil or something like that. Like, and if you were to like pluck these hairs or to shave these like hairs or whatever, like off of his chin, even though I'm trying to remember, I'm like, why would he only have 3 hairs on his chin?
Like, is it supposed to, they're like a young couple? You know what I mean? Like he's like 17, 18 years old.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But whatever it was like, oh, if you're able to like shave these off or cut these like off of his face, then he would be perfect. And this lady's like, oh, okay, maybe. Then she goes to the husband and is like, hey, your wife's kind of crazy. And he's like, excuse me, my wife is amazing. She's incredible. How dare you? And this lady was like, oh, yeah, I mean, I know that your wife seems really nice, seems really perfect, but she's planning on like slitting your throat tonight. And the guy was like, no, she wouldn't. And she was like, oh, yeah, like if you listen to me and you like close your eyes or like pretend to fall asleep a little bit on the couch. And when she creeps over to you, open your eyes and you'll see that she's like going to slit your throat. And so the guy was like, no, she would never do that. Kitta Grau is like this lady's name. I just found it. Okay. So this guy, he goes back to his house and like pretends to go to sleep or whatever. And his wife like creeps up on him and is like looking like over him because she's like looking for like the hairs like on his chin and she sees them. And he kind of like opens his eyes and is like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, nothing, sweetie, nothing. I was just looking at you while you're sleeping. And he was like, oh, okay. And he like closes his eyes again, but he's like, oh my gosh, that was kind of creepy. Like that was kind of weird. Could this lady be right? And so he like pretends like starts like snoring or something, just like, you know, like he's just like, you know, faking that sleep. He hears his wife like creeping closer and closer to him, and he like opens his eyes and she has like a knife, like, and she's like standing over him to
shave the 3 hairs off his beard.
Yeah. But he like grabs her hand and is like, what are you trying to do? Like, were you going to kill me? And she's like, no, I wasn't going to kill you. What's wrong with you? And they have like their first ever fight. And like, ever since like that like moment, their marriage was like horrible. And so this lady goes to the devil and she was like, well, I did it. Like I got this couple to fight when you couldn't. And the devil was like so freaked out by like this lady and how like messed up she was that like he handed her the like red shoes that she had wanted on a stick. And so I looked it up, and because I was like trying to remember as I was listening to you, I was like trying to remember like what was the name of this lady? Kitta Grau. And there is even a painting in a church in Sweden over a like door frame where it's like on one side of the door frame is the devil, and he has like a long stick going over the door. And on the opposite end is Kitta Grau and the red shoes. And so there's part of me that wonders, like when you were retelling that story, and I was like, okay, we'll see how the red shoes like connect to the rest of the story. And then they didn't.
Uh-huh.
But what did connect in my mind was like the misunderstanding, the getting away with something by making somebody think that they were going to like, get slit. And if people want to hear a longer version of that story and other tales of Yuletide specters, that's a bonus episode 19 on our Patreon. Like a quick little, it's just interesting to me, like how much like little stuff like that pops up and connects, or like a little motif, a little like item will pop up in one area and then reappear somewhere completely different, or it's just wild.
Yeah.
I do just want to say too that like doing this podcast also helps, because I might read a story and then immediately forget that I ever read it, that it ever happened, because it gets buried behind all these other tales in my brain. But the ones where we've retold them and laughed about them and added like some other like tidbits of like information to them stick in my brain so much better, because it's like I read it, I retold it, I edited me retelling it, or did like a quality control listen for like the publishing of like an episode. So it's like, it's so many times.
There's like more things than just the story itself to like remember it by, like, oh, like I'll remember that you made this like funny joke about something that happened. It's not part of the story of the joke, but like it reminds me of the part of the story that you were joking about, that I had to have that context for the joke to even be funny. So it like helps me remember. Yeah, I've noticed that too. The other thing about this one, speaking of like funny, is that this story is set up like a joke. It has a punchline, and the punchline is like the only one, like the whole thing of like why there are two birds. You know what I mean? Like it's set up from the beginning to be that way. Yeah. And it's so interesting because in some of the more modern folktales that we've talked about, from like the United States, or, you know what I mean? Like a lot more recent history, I feel like there's a lot more of those where the stories are jokes. Like it's set up in a way to have like a punchline like that. And like, I think some of the closest things in my mind, some of the things that like I experience that I recognize as being like folklore in my daily life are the jokes that people tell. You know what I mean? Like that's the most rare example of like this oral storytelling thing where it's like, oh, have you heard the one about whatever? And it's like, because it's a joke, it's a thing that people kind of know and have like their general like consciousness, and it's done really well. So it's like that it's just a big joke and it's set up like a joke and it has like a great payoff is funny. And it feels like very modern because of that too, in a way that's like, I can't remember another Grimm's fairy tale that I've read, and we'll see after we get through all 211 of them, like how many are like this, that is like that, that like, I feel like you get to the end of the story lots of times and it's like, oh, and like, it's just the end and that's just what happened. It doesn't like wrap up in that kind of a way, because that's not, how they told stories, obviously, except for when they did, like in this case.
Yeah, their endings like don't follow kind of what we think of as like the conventions of ending a story.
Yeah. And then in a similar vein, with it being a joke, it also felt very much like an episode of I Love Lucy or something like that, like very farcical.
Yeah.
And part of that is the very modern seeming like personality of this woman, Clever Gretel, in a way that you don't see again in a lot of other, like, I don't know. I feel like there is like a style of folktale that that's like, it's like a thing where the woman is like that. That's so different from how women are typically shown in so many of the other.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
yeah. Oh, I was just going to say, like, I love that this woman is just like, I don't know. She's very like earthy, very in her body of being like, I know what I like. Yeah. I like wearing my nice heels, going out with friends in my nice heels. I like good wine. I like good food. I like a good time. That's what I'm into. And then when her boss is like interrupting that good time, she's like, you know what? Forget
Yeah.
this guy. I'm going to eat his chicken and then I'm going to ruin his friendship. Like, I don't even care.
And it's like she just like is so good. Like there's no way that she could have had that planned out from the beginning. You know what I mean? She's just she's doing what she wants.
But moment to moment.
Like, exactly. Moment to moment, just doing what she wants. Like you said, enjoying her life and not caring about like the consequences until they come. And it's because apparently she's so clever that she's just able to get away with it, because as soon as the master comes home, is like, oh, get things ready. She's like, okay, yeah, it'll all be fine. It's clearly not going to be fine, you know? And I can see a reading of it where it's like she has that moment like on the other side of the door, like in an episode of I Love Lucy, where she's like got her back up against the door, like, don't come in here. The chickens are totally ready, but I don't want to spoil the surprise. Like there's that. But in my reading of it, especially because of like how short of a thing, she's like, oh yeah, it'll be done right away, you know? Like she just very confidently is like, I'll figure this out. I'll find a way to get out of this. And then just totally does by accusing the friend of like stealing and saying that the master's going to cut his ears off and all that stuff. She's just
that she like looks this man dead in the eyes and is like, dude, run.
Yeah.
This guy, he's actually nuts.
Yeah. So it was so fun. And my son like was just laughing the whole time. Okay, Katrina, it is now my time to Katrina you about this folktale. All right. So
awesome.
This is ATU type 1741.
Ooh. Love a good ATU type.
Which seems to be called Priests, Guests, and Eaten Chickens. But then there's another thing that groups a bunch of tales together and says they're the same ATU type 1741 that says Trickster, Wives, and Maids. And so the examples of this that it has on this site that kind of groups these together is Clever Gretel, which we've just read, Clever Molly, which is a similar story from Jamaica, apparently, and it's an Anansi tale, which is super interesting.
Ooh, yeah.
The Good Husband and the Bad Wife from India, and The Woman Who Humored Her Lover at Her Husband's Expense from the 1001 Nights, which, I mean, quote, 1001 Nights, because we were looking it up before the podcast to try to figure out, like, should we tell this story? Where does it come from? And the only sources that we could find were from the collection by Katrina's favorite collector of the 1001 Night Tales, Sir Richard Burton, who went on an expedition to find the source of the Nile River, which is a much more interesting story than, or was it the Amazon River? No, it was the Nile.
It was the Nile.
Which, you know, that's a better story than the stories that he collected for 1001 Nights, known to have greatly embellished these stories. And I was like, oh wait, no, I found like a legit source that also has this story in it. And it's from the Wortley Montague Codex, which does that not sound super like official and fancy and like it's a codex?
That does sound super official.
But then I'm reading this like translator's foreword to some version of like the version of the stories by Edward Wortley Montague Esquire, translated by Jonathan Scott, that says, unfortunately for his readers, Scott, who translated this from Arabic, enrolled himself amongst the acolytes of Professor Galland, a great and original genius in the line raconteur and a practical Orientalist whose bright example was destined to produce disastrous consequences. It's saying that about Professor Galland, who we've talked about in the podcast before in our 1001 Night series, which you can listen to. But it says this guy, whoever this person leaving this forward, is hilarious. Scott out Gallanded Galland. So he like went even further. He says, it's hard to quote a line which he deigned textually to translate. He not only commits a felony on the original by abstracting whole sentences and pages ad libitum, but he also thrusts false goods into his author's pocket and patronizes the unfortunate Eastern storyteller by foisting upon him whatever he, the, quote, translator and traitor, end quote, deems needful. On this point, no more need be said. The curious reader has but to compare any one of Scott's, quote, unquote, translations with the original, or for that matter, with the present version, aka like my version that I'm going to translate for you here. Which, I mean, I can't find this person's translation, but it sounds like maybe this story is there, but translated in a different way. But all that to say, we couldn't find in some of the more trustworthy translations that we usually reference a version of
Yeah.
this story, but we kind of wanted to retell it anyway, just because it's like short and very similar and also hilarious.
Yeah. No, and a quick note on like everything that like you just said. Hilarious. Just because it's like Galland, he was the first translator of the 1001 Nights, but the source that he was supposedly translating from is like lost to time. Nobody knows what he was translating from, but they're like he must have been familiar with something or been reading from something, because his stories do line up with tales that are now in the pieces that we do have of the 1001 Nights. But anyway, but yeah, it's people are like, how much of Galland was translation, and then how much of it was him filling in the blanks with whatever he, is like a French man of that time, thought sounded Arabic to him. But then Richard Burton did like the exact same type of thing, but like when he translated it into English, where he was like, oh, I'm going to make the stories like more sexist and more racist because that's what I'm into. And so every time I'm like reading something where it's like, oh, translated by Sir Richard Burton, I'm like, oh, here we go. So this story, I am retelling a translation from Richard Burton in the Book of the Thousand Nights and a Night. Supplemental nights. I'm like, supplemental. Where, sir, where did you get
These
this?
nights are specifically numbered.
He's like, oh, and here's an extra night worth of tales. Like, where did you find this? What gutter did you pull this out of? Your brain. Probably. No, it's fine. Because apparently this is part of some random other person's like codex, or part of it is found in some person's codex. Anyway, which is fine because the story is still going to be a good time. It might be more sexual than it needs to be. There was a man in Cairo, and he had a wife, but she was constantly boasting about how well behaved she was, how obedient, how, she was a God-fearing woman, or Lord-fearing, Allah-fearing woman. I don't know. Richard Burton said fear of the Lord, so it's fine. It's okay. So I'm like, quick side note on that is that like the words that people use to describe deity, especially in like Europe, usually had something to do with like how they would name like people who are
Feudalism.
higher than them. Yeah. Yeah. So Lord wouldn't be the word that like a person in the Middle East would use to describe like deity, because they didn't have lords and ladies in
Like the same way.
their culture. Yeah. But anyway, that was such an aside. Anyway, so this woman just constantly boasting about how like just obedient she was, how good she was, like very well-mannered woman. She was a God-fearing woman. And I'm like thinking of like Sister or Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. No. Anyway, so she happened to have in her house a couple of fat geese, but she also had a lover that she, kept in the wings of her, not in the wings of the geese, in the wings of her house. So it's like, I love that it's like in the first like couple sentences of the story, like woman who's constantly boasting about how great and well behaved and like wonderful she was. Meanwhile, also secret lover in the back, and also this pair of geese. So one day, her lover came to visit her, and he saw the fat geese, and he was looking at them and thinking, you know what, I'm pretty hungry. And those geese look pretty yummy. Like quite an appetite on this man. He likes other people's wives and other people's geese. Anyway, so he said to this woman, he was like, oh, my dear, you should cook me these two geese with like the best stuffing that you know how to make, and you and I can eat these together, have a good time. It'll be great. because I just can't stop thinking about how yummy those geese look and what a good cook you are. Come on, baby. Don't you want to make me happy? Come on. Anyway, so his lover, this woman, she was like, well, yeah, that's easily done. I can slaughter them and stuff them, and you can take them home with you and eat them at your own time. And my husband shall neither taste of them nor smell of them. She's like, don't even worry about this. But I do want to say that in this translation, she said, my pimp of a husband. And I'm like, my pimp of a husband? I don't know what the 19th century use of the word pimp meant. But anyway, we'll Google it later. Anyway, but her lover was like, well, how are you going to get away with that? Like, won't he notice if you, 1, kill these 2 geese, 2, cook
Start
them,
making your house smell super good.
smell super good of food, and then they're just like gone. But she was like, well, I'll trick him, and then I'll give the goose to you. For no one is dearer to me than you are. And my disgusting loser partner, my pandering mate, shall not have a single bite. So with this agreement made, her lover left. And when her husband came back that evening, she said to him, how can you call yourself a man when you never invite anyone to your house? How can you call yourself a man? What kind of man are you? Don't even have house guests. People will surely talk about you saying that you're a miser, you're not a generous person, that you never give to anybody else. Like, everyone is going to think that you're just like some greedy guy who won't share anything, won't invite people over to his house. And he was like, okay, whoa, slow down. Jeez, Louise, woman, I could do that. Tomorrow morning, I'll buy some meat, some rice, and you can cook that for dinner, and I'll invite over one of my friends. Jeez, calm down. And she was like, no. How about instead of that, buy a pound of mincemeat, then slaughter the 2 geese, and I'll stuff the geese with the mincemeat, and I will, stuff them, fry them up. Again, I also want to say that, I don't think mincemeat would be the word. Anyway, I don't think that that's the recipe. But for what is supposed to be this area, do I believe 100% that an Englishman thinks that mincemeat, people in the 1001 Nights was, anyway, it's fine. British people, their spice game is weak. Anyway, I'm sorry. So she's like, do that. Buy a pound of mincemeat, and then I'll slaughter these 2 big geese that we have, stuff them, fry them up, because I can't imagine anything better to offer our guests, and to offer a guest anything less than that would make you look really bad.
Rude.
I'm just such a good wife. I want to make you look good, man. I want to make you look good in front of other people. I'm such a good wife. I care about you and your image, and come on, let me protect you. And so he was like, okay, I'll do that for sure. I'll go and do that. So early the next morning, he slaughters the geese, and then he went out to go get the mincemeat, and plus he got her some rice and some spices.
There we go.
Everything so that
Some
we go,
spice.
some spices. Let's do this stuff. It says hot spices, which I'm like, love that the British were like, oh, you know how they are with their spices. They hurt my mouth. Just kidding. I'm like, I have such a low spice tolerance. Well, no, I have a low hot spice tolerance. I like my food flavored. But anyway, so he did. He went out, he got all the things that she asked for so that she could make this meal. And he brought them back to his wife and was like, okay, so here's all the stuff. Try to have the food cooked by midday, because that's when I'm going to bring my guest over. And so she was like, okay, sounds great. So she cleaned up the geese, stuffed them with the mincemeat, and made rice with almonds and raisins, and fried everything, cooked everything just the way that her lover liked them. So after she had been doing all this cooking, she had somebody go and fetch her lover. And when he came back, they quote unquote made merry together. And then she gave him the geese. Thank you, Sir Richard Burton, for leaving it up to our imaginations about what make merry means instead of telling us explicitly. Because I do want to say that Richard Burton also made a translation of a couple of books that are the Garden of Love and the Kama Sutra. So listen, he probably could have gone into more explicit detail, but he didn't here in this story just then. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, I didn't even know that that's what he meant. I thought he just meant that they were having a merry old time. Fun.
You are so sweet, Jeffrey. You are so pure. Love that for you. My husband and I made merry last night.
You were celebrating your new house.
Yes, that's what
you had much to be merry about.
Yes.
To make merry about.
Indeed. That'll be the ender.
Ender? I hardly know her.
What?
Which is like, that's really unfortunate because that could mean like murder.
Yeah, it's for real. Like, ender. No. So anyway, so upon his arrival, they made merry. And then she gave him the geese and he left. Which I'm like, wait, you didn't eat together. It's fine. Whatever.
I mean, that to be fair, that was the plan all along. Was like to give him the geese. Which, I mean, it does seem like, I think it really is painting this guy in like not great light. To be like, hey, because it was his idea to begin with. He's like, why don't you make me these turkeys so that I can have them and go and like eat them on my own. These turkeys that don't belong to me after I've been making merry with a woman who's also not mine. That's, with someone else.
Yes. So yeah, this story is really making that secret lover look bad.
I mean, the wife's not looking too great either, but like he looks even
what?
worse.
Are you kidding? She's a very pious wife.
She's always boasting about it.
She's always talking about it. It has to be true. So anyway, so at noon, her husband came home accompanied by his friend, and she said, "Why have you only brought one man? You go back and fetch 2 or 3 more. Like, why are you just bringing one guy? You only have one friend? That's not a show of generosity, just inviting one person. Go tell more people that they're invited to come to our house." And he was like, "Oh, okay, sure, no problem. I'll go do that." So her husband went off to do what she had asked. So then the woman turned to the guest and was like, "Oh, the pity of it. By Allah, you are lost. And what a shame that you have no children." And the man was like, "Girl, what?" Like, what are you talking about? What? I'm so scared. I just got to your house and like, now you're freaking out saying these things. Woman, what are you saying? And so she replied, "I have to tell you the truth. My husband brought you here with the intention of gilding you like an animal," which this is a animal husbandry podcast. Yeah. To geld an animal is you remove their testicles. Which generally, men who have testicles, they generally have 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is important for the story. It's much like ears, they have 2. Anyway, so she was like, "I pity you. Oh, whether you live after this or die, it's going to be horrible." And the guest was like, "Whoa, what the crap are you talking about?" And so the guest, he just like rushes out of the door. As he's like bursting open the door, the husband's like coming back and he has like 2 more guys with him. And the wife like met her husband like at the entrance. It was like, she runs to the door to like her husband as this guy's like making his like escape. And she like goes to her husband. She's like, "Oh my goodness, why did you bring a thief and a liar? Like, why'd you bring like a horrible person to our house? A ne'er-do-well." Love it.
Ne'er once has he done well.
"Why did you bring this thief and ne'er-do-well to our house?" And the husband's like, "Wait, whoa, who are you talking about?" And she's like, "The guest that you brought home and left here, he just stole the 2 geese and ran away with them." And the husband was like, "Oh my gosh, what in the world?" So he starts running after the guy because he's like, "Hey, I invited you to my house and you're like stealing my, like, this is some messed up stuff." So the husband, he takes off after him and he catches sight of this guest just like booking it running. And he's like, come back. At least give me one and you can keep the other. And the guy like cries out, "If you catch me, you'll take both of them." And which I'm like, I don't know whether he was voicing a fear or he was like, take both or none. That's my offer. We all understand the joke, but I love that like the housemaster meant the 2 geese, but the man who was running away thought only of himself, saying to himself, selfish. He means, how selfish. He means that he will take only one of my testes and leave me the other. Like, thank you, Sir Richard Burton, for spelling it out for us so that we could fully understand the joke. Yeah, like, dude, we got it. We're not stupid. So anyway, so the guest just kept running, booking of and the husband following him. Unable to catch him, he returned to his guest and served them a simple meal of bread and such. All the while, the woman kept blaming him and nagging him about the matter of the geese, which she said his friend had carried off, but which in truth she had given to her lover. Love that journey for her.
Yeah. It's like, it's just hilarious. Like he thought he was gonna take his testes, which is,
yeah,
I don't know, arguably worse than ears.
Yeah. I can't remember whether like you've said this or not, but because we know that like Richard Burton, dubious translator, it's hard to tell whether or not he like he was already aware of the Brothers Grimm story when he wrote this, and he was like, do you know what's even funnier than cutting off somebody's ears?
He's like, I can do you one better. I can do you two better.
And so it's like, oh, was that story that the Brothers Grimm collected? Because we know that some of the tales in the Brothers Grimm were influenced by the 1001 Nights. So it's like, were their tales influenced by the 1001 Nights in that respect? And then this story led to that? Or
which came first?
Did both of them come from the 1001 Night? Yeah. And I'm like,
the gooses or the eggs?
I see what you did there. Oh man. But absolutely delightful. I'm grateful for your son's sake that he was told the story of the ears and not whatever trash Sir Richard Burton is peddling these days.
And it was interesting too. Like, I didn't ever suspect that this was like a thing, you know? I was just like, I had only seen that one story and we just thought it was delightful. And just on a whim, I was like, I'll be somewhat Katrina-ish about it and do some research. Minimal research. But then to see that there was like, you know, this one from the 1001 Nights with like dubious legitimacy to how authentic it is to the translation to the original. But then there was another one like from Jamaica where it's like really similar, but it was like thinking that she said that the person was going to cut off their hands instead. So it's like a different thing that you have two of on your body, and our bodies are made very symmetrically. So there are a lot of things that we have two of that joke could like work with, like 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 hands, 2 feet, 2 legs, you know, 2 testes. Some of us have none. Some of us only have one. Some of us had accidents while playing basketball and someone had a pencil in their back pocket. But anyway, so it's just like, it was interesting to see that like, oh, this is not just one funny story. This is like a thing. And there are variations on the theme in different places, you know, throughout the world at different times. And like, I think it's so funny too, no matter where, and I wish we could find out, you know, and maybe we can with some more research, but like either way, like if Sir Richard Burton's translation is faithful, that is super interesting and funny. And then it also has something to say about like the Brothers Grimm. If this story does not exist and it's just one that he basically made up because he'd heard these stories like from Brothers Grimm or wherever else, that is also very interesting in its own right, in a completely different way. It's important to know the difference. And unfortunately, dear listener, you don't, and neither do we. But if we do find out, we'll make sure to tell you. But it still is just, you know, to me, delightful and a fun little journey that we went on from just one funny little story that I never would have read if my son had not insisted on wanting to read every single one of the Brothers Grimm's tales.
Because like I feel like I can honestly say that like that story in the Brothers Grimm collection definitely wasn't on my list of like tales upcoming, like episodes that we are going to do. Like it really was like the joy that this story brought one child. Now we gift to you.
Yeah. And in comparison to the 1001 Nights one too, I do like, I mean, I guess there's a way that people could, you know, you could spin it to be like, oh, it's like, it's kind of maligning Gretel, even though it's like saying that she's clever and showing that she is clever. It's also showing that she's like an alcoholic and like maybe gluttonous or something. I don't know, because she's like eating so much food or whatever. But like, I don't know, like I like Gretel a lot in this story. Like, you know, she's she's a character whose story I want to see, and I want her to succeed and get away with her plan in the end. Like that other lady, I do not want that to happen because she's just so terrible. Like, and the guy that gets the geese in that one also, like, she doesn't even get to eat the geese. She's like, does it all on behalf of this other guy who's like also terrible, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm glad that my first
man.
introduction to it was through Clever Gretel, and that she will forever, have a place in my mind and my heart as just a alcoholic, gluttonous trickster.
It's like, girl, me too. No, what I think is really interesting about like you pointing out kind of like the difference of like you rooting for characters, it also gives all of us some insight into like things that you value, where you clearly do not value or root for somebody who's like cheating on their husband and using a woman for her like assets, like her geese, and stealing her having her like cook you a meal. And so you're like those two people, you're like, I can't root for this lady and I can't root for her lover, but some old woman stealing from her employer, you're like, girl, get him. You're like, I'm rooting for you.
Yeah.
There's something beautiful about that, Geoff, about exploring that within yourself.
Like, I'm all right with stealing, but I draw the line at adultery.
Yeah. It's one thing to covet your neighbor's ass. It's another to covet their geese.
I thought you were going to say your neighbor's wife's ass.
Sorry, I had to make it biblical.
She had to make it biblical.
Yeah, he knows her biblically.
So I'm not as well practiced at this as Katrina is. And so I don't have a good way of wrapping it all up in the end, except to say that I've really been enjoying reading these stories with my son. And I'm glad that he is insisting on doing this, because I'm reading a lot of stories that I almost assuredly would not have read if it weren't for him.
Yeah.
And like you may not have had put on our radar for doing on the podcast, just because there are so many of them. It's like we do Brothers Grimm so often enough already, even if we just stick to the really well-known ones that have a lot of stuff written about them. So we hope that you also enjoyed this, being exposed to this tale that we wouldn't have told you if it weren't for my son. So you can thank him if you enjoyed it. And if not, I mean, you could blame him, but he's like 9 years old. So that would be kind of a jerk move on your part.
Yeah.
The end.
Thank you for listening to The Fairy Tellers. If you enjoy what we're doing, please leave us a review or share us with your friends. For access to exclusive bonus content, consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/thefairytellers. Special thanks to Andy Forey for our music and to Clarice Inch for our artwork. And of course, a big thank you to all our patrons. Without all of you, this show wouldn't be possible.
Good stories pay little attention to cultural or linguistic frontiers. The student of story collections find themselves adrift on an ocean of stories, an ocean which is boundless, deep, and ceaseless in motion. Robert Irwin.
And we made it through with all of our ears, hands, and testicles intact.
Oh, I have 2 boobs.
Congratulations. That's the ender.